The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready to take a journey? Let's connect with the healers of the world. It's that time. It's time for the Language of Healing on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Now here's your host, Emotional Wisdom Training Specialist Nicole Fortin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Language of Healing. We are Friday, October 22nd, and we're tuning in live on W4CY Radio today and Talk4 TV. If you're tuning in live on Facebook or YouTube, we're happy to have you here, and you can comment or ask us questions anytime that we're on live here. And of course, if you're listening to the replay, just pop any questions or comments in the chat and we'll be happy to get back to you and engage in the conversation. Today, we're talking about burnout, depression, and its connection to your life's purpose. And this topic is really interesting to me because, you know, I believe that, well, maybe not everybody, but many of us want to live life in their biggest, most fulfilling or most potential, and doing something that's really fulfilling for us, that nourishes our mind, body, and spirit, or our heart. And this is sometimes easier said than done. How do we actually do that? How do we actually align mind, body, heart? And this is the work that that draws me to these healing arts. I think that when it comes to health, well-being, illness, there's so much more than we know about our mind and body connection, right? For example, I worry, and so I worried so much that it upset my stomach, you know, that mind-body connection. And there's another part to that is the heart. What does the heart want? What does the heart say? What are the heart's desires? And all three of these pieces need to be in line for, you know, ultimate flow and connection. And we can talk about the sequence of three in so many ways, right? Mind, body, heart, conscious, subconscious, unconscious, heaven, human, earth. There's many, many ways, right? The Holy Trinity. So today we're going to explore a little bit more around that with a very special guest who has done so many amazing things and has great work and great practices for this kind of thing. She works with women in transition mainly, and a few special men as well, who are looking for a bigger life, more to their life. Because, just reading some statistics on burnout and depression, and it's pretty common. And maybe more so in the past recent years, as we, our values are around, maybe a little bit more around, work. Work burnout is generally where you'll hear the word burnout, right? It is in career. So if something's not fulfilling you, it's exhausting, draining, leads to fatigue, and which isn't really good to support your body. Your immune system gets weakened by that. Your sleep is disrupted. Relationships may be strained and tense, and just not really feeling good. So we want to feel as good as we can with what's going on, and with using all the tools and resources that are available to us. And today we're going to share some tools and resources with you, simple practices that can help shift from burnout, exhaustion, fatigue into joyful, life purpose, soul fulfilling And that's what really sparks me up. I get a lot of joy out of exploring that. What might my soul want? What does my heart want? The heart is often the one that speaks the quietest. The body is really loud. It is often communicating to us in the loudest form, but there's also the mental aspect and the heart aspect. And so I just wanted to maybe go through some definitions and signs and symptoms of burnout and depression. Maybe you can relate, or you know someone who's going through this, and so please share this conversation with others and help us bring this into more light. Typically, it's with work related, and also trouble with social life. So there's trouble balancing both aspects. Maybe you want something more out of work, or you're overworked, overloaded. Communication is poor, mismanagement. All of those things can contribute to stuckness. I think like blocks and challenges, and as you keep coming up, blocks and challenges, that's energy consuming. So we want more flow and more ease and more joy in what we're doing every day. Severe signs of burnout: chest pain, shortness of breath, dizziness, mental collapse, depression. Psychological signs: feeling tense and irritable, outbursts of anger, feeling pessimistic about the future, feeling detached from others, seeking physical and emotional isolation, losing enjoyment in everything you liked about your job. There's, anxiety, lethargy, apathy, just a total hopelessness of life. It's really hard to have a clear direction and clear vision when you're in this state. And physical signs then can lead to chronic fatigue, trouble sleeping, loss of appetite, loss of focus and concentration, and a weak immune system. So this is huge. I'm a strong advocate for listening to, hearing what the messages are that, or the guidance that our bodies, minds, hearts want to carry through. And that's sometimes hard to decipher, and is the reason why I've started this language of healing, because there's a lot more to it, and we can have fun in this conversation, even though things like depression and burnout aren't really fun, and it's really hard to see beyond it. So we're just going to unravel that a little bit. It's okay. I think I read the varying statistics around like 43% to 76% of people experience burnout, and depression is on the rise, anxiety on the rise. And where my attention goes to that is taking care of the younger populations, the adolescents and the childhood development. Mental health development is really critical at that time. And so any more tools and resources that we can have that support ourselves and each other and the ones that we love is worth sharing. So let's introduce our guest for today, Fran Watson. Let's bring her on here.
Hello.
Hi, Fran.
Nice to see you.
So, yeah, you too. Thank you for joining us today. So you work, the art of feminine presence has been a big body of your work, and you're doing coaching. And what was the one you recently, the Spiritual Center?
I am a licensed practitioner with the Centers for Spiritual Living. So that's a worldwide organization that is focused on metaphysical training and teaching. So very much about how our mind and our thoughts affect our experience, and being able to access a new way of living and thinking. Great spiritual, non-religious, embraces all teachings, all spiritual paths. So it's been a great deep dive in addition to the art of feminine presence work that I have been trained in. So it encompasses a lot. the background. The background encompasses a lot of different modalities of thought and healing.
Yeah, because I think when we're talking about this kind of thing with burnout and depression, it's really hard to pinpoint, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not something that you can pick up on a blood test, or like it's very subjective and different for everybody. Everyone's experiencing it maybe at a different level, so it's hard to put words to that. And I think that then that's where we have to incorporate these other aspects of ourselves, like our spirit.
Yeah.
Everybody does have a spirit, a soul, or there's something behind the mechanicalness of our system, right?
You know what? Everything turned around for me. I always felt that way, Nicole. I never actually was skilled at contacting it on a regular basis until the last decade, when I really had to dive in. I was forced to. And like, I've been on a spiritual path for many, many years, but there's deeper and deeper levels of that. And that idea of feeling supported, that life is unfolding in my favor, no matter what it looks like in the moment, that there's a bigger picture and a bigger energy that is supporting me and alive in me. Feels like the chi that you're working with all the time, that life force, contacting that and playing with that allowed me to turn the page on burnout. It's not that I don't get tired, but I sure don't experience that hopelessness and resentment and frustration and exhaustion, that chronic nature of it all. That is in the past. I'm really grateful to say that, because I was in some pretty dark places at different times. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you have experienced that.
Tons.
And
yeah.
So what led you to turn that around?
Well, I always thought that I would feel better once I met my mate or had my baby. I always had this idea that it would be, once this thing happened or that thing happened, I'd just get through this experience and then I would feel better. So it was always this, just get me through this, and then I might feel better for a while, and then the whole thing would play over again. But I did meet my husband at 39. I got married at 41 and had the baby at 43. And it should have been like happily ever after. That's what the subconscious track in my head was. And really what came out of that was, is this all there is? And I just started to live in a world of living by the list and image of, okay, this is what a good wife does. This is what a good mother does. And I wasn't alive in those roles. I was just playing house and playing mom. And it led to some pretty dark places, along with menopause. And yeah, the hormones were coming and going. And it was rough. And it nearly cratered my marriage. And that's actually when I ran into the art of feminine presence, as a come back to myself, come back home, come back to my body. Those first gatherings, women's circle, in our mutual friend had Amara, who invited me to join into a group. And that was my respite. That was my oasis. And that's where I learned to start really taking care of myself from the inside out. Yeah. Using the practices of the art of feminine presence and building on it from there. I haven't really looked back from that time.
Yeah. And what would you say made the biggest difference for you?
The body-based awareness of coming back and understanding what it's like to actually be in my body. Not just walking and doing my exercises or yoga or anything like that. It was actually a sense of the life force that's moving through my body and connecting to that and anchoring to that with some of the practices that we learned. So accessing the power center, which you as a master of Chinese medicine, and the practices of feminine presence as well. So coming back and anchoring in the belly, that dantian, that hara, the practices of qigong, those kinds of things where we're tapping into an infinite source of energy. No one ever actually has to be burnt out if we learn to go there on a regular basis and then learn how to flow it throughout the body on a regular basis.
Yes.
That's step one. Like, sounds so simple, doesn't it? Oh, just go to your belly. But it's not simple and that hard if you don't do it.
Right. Well, you know, it's funny that our body is our vehicle, right? We're aware of it, but are we really engaging with it? You know, we can really disconnect often, like out of sight, out of mind. Or yeah, like you say, I'm just going to stick to this list, do what I think I should, right? Or just maintaining some level of like a baseline, right? But not really engaging those other parts of us that really enhance our experience of living and give us that reason for living. And what are we living for? What are we doing this for? Without that, I think it's very empty, you know, like, and I think that's burnout. It's like feeling empty inside, like not just tired all the time, drained. So we want, and then we do things that we think will fuel us, but really just drain us.
It's true. I wanted to feel like if once I checked that box and got those groceries or took my son to the park or, you know, whatever it was that day, that would be enough. And I took a ton of supplements, which I still do all of those things. It's just that there's a place of connecting to what I would just, so there's that connecting to the belly, but one of the practices in the art of feminine presence is understanding what the feminine essence is, what the masculine essence is, and what makes us alive and feel joyful and operating from our natural biological tendency, which is that which makes us female or male. It doesn't matter who you're sleeping with or who you're attracted to or your gender identity per se. It's that natural biological thing that makes me a woman. For most of us females in the culture, we haven't been rewarded for expressing that. It tends to be that we are much more driven by what we've accomplished and that driving forward so that we can pay our bills, so that we can succeed in all the different ways we do. We're getting elected to be mayors and premiers and all of those things, and that's wonderful. But without connecting to the feminine essence, we're missing a big piece of what energizes us as women. So we're living maybe from the heart up, definitely from the head up. But the greatest source of our energy is actually our center of gravity should be much lower in the body. And when I started to understand that also, that I was either stuck in the doing piece or in the neutral kind of zombie-like moving through my life. So just to use another metaphor for it. So if the masculine is Costco and Safeway is neutral, the farmer's market is feminine, right? There's that sensuality, that sense of connecting to the colors, the sounds, the touch, and all of that feels so wonderful. That is the feminine essence. And we all need that, men and women, but women are not hanging out there enough. That alone can allow the joy level to go up considerably. Such a simple way to do that, but choose to move and be operating from a natural feminine essence and understanding what that is and playing in that field versus just kind of getting through in a very neutral state or driving forward in a masculine state. It's exhausting if it's not your natural biological state. So most of us have been crowded up at this other end of the continuum, and we just need a larger base to express ourselves from.
Mm-hmm. And we just like, that's a possibility. We just don't know how to get there. It's like what to do.
Yeah, I never knew.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew how to dress up. I knew how to put on makeup, sort of. My mom was a total tomboy. And so that has nothing to do with it because it's not really about what you're wearing or whether you, or what your shell is, how that needs to be an expression from the inside out as well. But a lot of women have learned how to dress up as a woman, but not how to relax into what it is to connect to that natural source of our sensuality, which is our five senses: the sounds, the tastes, the savoring, the beauty, the senses, our touch, how the clothes feel on our body, how we connect to the world around us. It's much more primal than just the mental list that connects. Then when I come back to my list, it's like, how do I want to do those groceries today? Where do I want to go to get my apples? How am I going to choose my apples versus just grabbing a bag? Now, I still go to Costco and I do all that, but I make sure I go from a different place so that it's way more fun. And
Right.
parts. So do you know what I mean? It's a quarter turn. None of these things are complicated, but they changed everything for me. It was like a whole nother level of life opened up, and there's years of exploration in it, or at least there has been for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from my Chinese medicine background, everything is based on yin or yang, like, masculine, feminine. If we
Yeah.
just, and they each have their own qualities and they're all relative to each other. So, like, basic example, the sun is masculine
Yeah.
and the moon is feminine. And then there's the full moon and the new moon. And they're each, like the full moon is masculine compared to the new moon. So there's a real richness when you open up to more meaning, or not just meaning, but like, oh, maybe the way that I've been doing it isn't the only way. There's something else. And I think just we're naturally not really like trained, or our society is really valued and structured on the doing and the success and the results. And that's very masculine energy, and the feminine energy. And it's coming more and more. Yes, we just elected our first female mayor in Calgary, Alberta. Yep.
She's
That's
awesome.
big news for this week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just like one way we're seeing it, maybe. But so this, I think understanding that concept is really important. So it brings it back to choice. Everything that you're doing, you have a choice, like where are you, what are you doing it for? What do you want out of it? So intention. And but there's something that you said earlier about the center of gravity, which is very interesting. And I want to talk a little bit about essence, because like, what is essence? And from an Eastern medicine perspective, that is a big part of it. It's all of the, like the diet, the lifestyle, the practices, they're all meant to cultivate and preserve our essence. And if you're not really connected in with your essence, it's just like this, we could utilize it way more. So it's, I view our essence, it comes from, it's ancestral, it's inherited from our mom and dad. And so they say, like, at time of conception, that's what gives us our essence, and our prenatal essence. And then after we're born, we have our postnatal essence that we get from food and breath. And these are two ways that we nourish ourselves. But I think, resting, like you say, relaxing into your natural essence is a more flow state. So you're not going against the grain and consuming your essence, because then essence as well, I view it as what's that thing called? The hourglass?
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you just have one hourglass, and the minute you're born, it's kind of like flipped over, and your essence is, essentially depletes over and over. So there's things that we can do that help preserve our essence, like taking care of our food and our, stress and sleeping and those kinds of things. the worst thing they say is staying up late, drinking, having sex. It's like the most depleting the most depleting essence activity you can do. And then, if you're in your like 20s or something, this is when you have a lot of it and should be conserving it. But not to get too off topic, but I think that that's part of it, because I don't know, just reading some statistics, like they say that this, in our mental health development is really from a young age. And so these are critical times, like in the 20s, late teens, 20s. Because if it's not handled there, then you're just taking those patterns into later life, and you keep looking for the next thing that might help support you, but it's already there. Just retraining, reshifting how we work with that.
Makes sense. I mean, I've had the opportunity. It seems like most of the people who contact me are in their late 30s, 40s, and recognizing that all that they thought, that they thought they'd be in a different place by now, that there would be more, hit that place that I thought, is this all there is? I know there's more available to me, and I don't know if I had been able to learn what I know now back then. And when I have been able to work with younger women, I can feel that avenue opening up for them. There's just this wider scope and many more conscious choices available, other than what's expected of them by their families, what's expected of them by the download of history, and that essence that they have inherited. Some of that is not all helpful, I would wager. Some of it's old cultural stuff that is very limiting and constraining, and creates some pressure that isn't actually necessary to keep hanging on to. So detaching from that which is no longer serving me, that isn't of my essence, not my true essence, not that,
Right.
not that which I was born to become. So I spent a lot of time saying and realizing and recognizing that this body was designed perfectly to do something only you can do. The uniqueness of it, there's a basic structure that we all share, but there's so much expression available to us if we can just tap into it. And so the practices of Art of Feminine Presence allow us to start slowing down and connecting to, and then all the possibilities start to open up. So that's kind of the foundation of what I'm up to.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, because I think about the essence probably as visually as this like deep reservoir of water or something like that, right? It's like a deep pool that if we're spending too much time in our head and, heart up, we're really good at that, like just like the worry and all of that things. But if we can rest into that a little bit, there's so much more information that we can gather, and with the Art of Feminine Presence. So this is a body of work developed by Rachel Jane Groover. And so anyone who's interested in that can contact Fran and or myself, and we can.
There's the book.
Oh, here we go.
She wrote the book. You can tell that it's seen some action. There's even been a second publishing of it, but there's a lot of power in here around what presence is, what it isn't, how it feels to be alive with it.
Right. So that's really the first step, is connecting back into our body. And like you said, the center of gravity, which is our power center, or the dantian, which interestingly, Fran, is where our essence lives, is in that space, like between the kidneys, in that lower dantian area. So to really sink into our hips and feel our legs, and sorry, my things are popping up here.
That's okay.
So the balance, and from an anatomical perspective, our center of gravity is in S2, which is our sacral spine. So, I mean, if you're spending lots of time up here, you're not really balanced. You're tipping over So what's really supporting you? So number one, get into your body and be in that seat of your pelvis and your essence. So what might else support somebody in connecting in with their soul work that might help them just bring a little bit more joy? Because if someone's feeling really depressed and burnt out, it's, I think something needs to be approached delicately and needs a lot of emotional sensitivity, receptivity, and emotional maturity and wisdom. That's what, emotional wisdom training is designed to support as well. So what might be that little nudge?
Such a powerful question and a big one, and it's different for every person, I think. But first of all, to recognize this is not how it has to be. That sounds like very trite and simple, but I really didn't recognize that I had a choice. That this is just the track I'm on, and I can't do it any differently. I don't know how to do it any differently. If I could do it, I would do it, but I don't know how. And so for me, opening up to the possibility that something can change. Just that little tiny crack that says there's a possibility for change. And I'm going to commit to holding that space open. So often, I feel like I don't know if this is on topic or off topic exactly, but so often I find that so many people just need to be comforted. If I know all of my sessions happen online these days because of COVID, but in essence, I feel like I'm gathering that delicate soul onto my lap and rocking them. There's this place where people need so much tenderness, so much soul care, because they've extended themselves out. They've been giving and giving and giving and doing and doing and doing, and they haven't learned how to receive. And they're so exhausted, and all of them want to simply be gathered up and given a chance to just rest. There's nothing you need to do. There's nowhere else you need to be. You don't have to please me. You don't have to shine right now. You can just be here and let me hold you. I think that a lot of the world would benefit from that just inner rocking. Sounds kind of oversimple, but it's a starting point where I have to go with some clients who are just that tired. Permission to stop.
Yeah, and that's like the feminine essence. There is the stillness, the quiet, the nurturing,
the heart
and inherently what a mother does or a parent does with a restless newborn, right? It's like the rocking and holding, caressing, like you are safe. I think that's a big thing that stops people from feeling what they're feeling is not having a safe space. And I'm not just talking about like the physical environment, but a space where in your bubble or your light globe that you feel that you can actually relax and rest and feel what you're feeling and just let it come up and move. And from Chinese medicine perspective, well, it's maybe not just Chinese medicine or Eastern medicine, but emotion, energy in motion is really what that is. And if we repress or have emotions stick to us, they become stagnant and they don't move.
Exactly.
We don't know how to express it because it's like it's stuck there, and I don't know, however long it gets stuck there, that can lead to other illnesses, right?
Well, exactly. And so I don't even know why I brought that particular thing up, but it just feels so strong because I was just tapping into that place of exhaustion that so many are feeling, and that very first step is just permission to change, and then coming back in and allowing ourselves to actually to stop and feel. And I'm amazed at our Western culture's inability to know what the heck we're feeling. Like, there's this overlying numbness, which also is contributing to burnout. And when we think we're going to just go downstairs, watch some more Netflix, have another glass of wine, which I'm a fan of, don't get me wrong. But when it's that kind of, that is not the stuff that rebuilds our energy. So we need to do much more conscious relaxation, conscious outreach, conscious checking in with how am I actually feeling. So I spend a lot of time training my clients to get to the belly, stop and notice their body. So I have a tune-in meditation that allows people to just start to notice their body sensations. A lot of people really have not been safe in their own bodies either, right? For a lot of reasons. And so they just don't want to come back in. And so there's a gentle coming back in and naming sensations, noticing how I'm feeling physically, and then starting to identify, what am I feeling emotionally? Not that it's my identity, not that it's a fact, but it is what I'm feeling, and it's part of our human design. Emotions are pointing us to something that we actually want, a conversation that needs to be had, a change in life, what I want to eat. There's just so many points of choice that we have throughout the day. But if we can't stop and feel what we're feeling, we're not making conscious choices. We're just doing things out of habit and out of what other people expect of us. So there's a training of coming back in, noticing what I'm feeling, and then sensing this, like you use the word light glow, and it's that energetic space around the body about to an arm's length out. That is our sovereign space. And I try and get people to think of it as a very thick rim where they are safe within that space and they are the driver. They are actually in control of this. Anything that happens in that space is entirely up to them. Once they know it, it changes everything, because then we have a natural boundary and there is this place that I can own and take responsibility for. And when I'm responsible, and I'm in my own driver's seat, everything is possible again. It's not all about what everyone else says, what's expected of me, false agreements that I might have made, or unconscious agreements, toxic relationships, and all of that kind of thing. It's like coming back, sensing my own power. How do I want to use it? Who do I want to use it with? And all of that. And it's a very gradual process. I'm not going to say it's all a cure overnight. But these are trainings that anyone can do, and they're not hard, but they take commitment.
Yeah, I'd say years, like
Yeah.
it's a lifelong, actually. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, and in emotional wisdom training, there's a principle that we use around what limits you can actually motivate you.
Yeah.
Because when you do come up against some challenges or roadblocks along the way, or frustrations, difficult situations, relationships, like jobs that aren't fulfilling anymore, those emotions or feelings that you're feeling are there for a reason,
Yeah.
like it's not meant to like limit you and bring you down. It's meant to inspire change or motivate you to expand or move or shift some level of awareness and boundaries, right? They often test our boundaries. Like, what is acceptable now? Now that I know what is acceptable, like in my sovereign space, and that can change, right? I love this line of yes doesn't mean always, and no doesn't mean never.
Means not now or okay today.
Yeah, exactly. Like we
Or
have
this 5
choice.
minutes.
What's that?
Or this 5 minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it can change that fast, especially when we're feeling hormonal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, then there's that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if really, but statistically, I've seen more reports of this low-level depression, burnout, emptiness from women. And I wonder if that does have something to do with hormones or maybe the lack of connection with our feminine essence, because we're not trained. That's kind of a bit of a weakness, you know?
Yeah.
I think in me, oh, you're emotional, like women are emotional. Like, how about that belief, right? Like, not necessarily true. I think everybody has emotions. We are human experiencing them all, but
Yeah.
to associate it as it being a negative thing,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's one of our great gifts. And
Yeah.
it's one that when they get repressed, or there isn't space for them, and we don't have the capacity to just allow them to rise up like a wave and move on. They get stuck and explode, and that's true for all of us. But with these surges of hormones that are more frequent, and you're going to be way more of an expert in this than I am, but we haven't gotten good at riding the waves and just letting them come and release and move forward without turning them into great drama and doubling down on them and making them our huge story, when they're just a snapshot of a moment in time. This is how it is today. A bad moment doesn't have to make a bad day, and a bad day doesn't have to make a bad week, and a bad week doesn't have to make like a terrible month. But lots of people do that because they feel bad, and so then I must be bad and my life must be bad. It's just energy rising, going, but we get stuck because we haven't been given permission to honor it and let it go. And so you're dealing with that all the time, with stagnancy of that. But when we can kind of keep rolling, so there's that. I just think of it all as big waves that we have to learn how to ride and deal with. So there's times when we are low in our energy and we need to rest. And there's times where we're low in our energy because life is calling us forward and we're not listening. We're not listening to that bigger call, that bigger possibility. Like for years, I was working in the film industry as a publicist, and I was really good at it. I was one of the best in Canada. Well, others said so. I believe them. Why not? I was great at it. I worked hard. I gave it everything, but I knew there was more for me. And it was really hard to let go of that. And it just got harder and harder to do. And I felt lower and lower, less fulfilled, more exhausted, the more I continued to go with it. But I didn't know how to get out of it. I had a whole bunch of wonderful kudos for what I did for a living. People thought it was really cool. I was successful. I got to do and meet cool people. And so my ego was pretty invested in it. But my body and my heart were just like, oh. But I also needed the money. So these are hard negotiations in life. But I find a lot of people are there. Like, I know there's more for me, and I'm stuck because my family wants this for me, or I know I need to earn money. And like, we have our requirements. So, but that soul knows that there's a bigger possibility. And I think the older we get without listening to that, the more pressure comes on. And so that's why I feel, and women being, the women that I work with are highly sensitive to it, but just don't know how to negotiate that space. And it takes some tenderness, some gentleness, some permission to say there is more available to me and start exploring it. And what has brought me to this point that's worked, that I love to do, that I've enjoyed, that are my natural gifts and talents that want to be expressed. And how can I just enjoy my life more moment to moment right now, even if I am continuing on in this career, until such time as I'm ready to make that leap. But starting to learn how to experience pockets of joy, at least. Learning to discover, what do I really enjoy? What brings me pleasure? The idea of pleasure was such a shock to me. I worked with one teacher. She had me writing 5 minutes a day on the topic of pleasure. I'm like, what? I have a list. Pleasure's not on the list.
Yeah.
Laundry
I have a
is on the
similar,
list.
I have a
Groceries on the
similar
list.
experience. Like, I was receiving some care, and I've always been really interested in taking like just all the modalities. So
Yeah.
this one was around body talk, which is a modality you can
Yes.
into. But the woman asked me, "What makes you happy?" And I just broke down, like I just cried. And I
Yeah.
was like, isn't it sad that I don't know that? I don't actually know what makes me happy, even though I'm doing all of these things. Like I was like studying really interesting, like subjects. Like I love school learning, but it's like, I don't know, there's something a little bit like unfulfilling. So I think that really pushed me into exploring this kind of thing more. And maybe it's just that nudge that we need. Fran, you have so many great resources on your website and your Instagram, and I love what you share, the posts you share, the videos you make. Yeah, anyone in your realm is so lucky to have you, and so I encourage anyone listening and watching to contact Fran and check out her website at biggerlifenow.com and on Instagram at biggerlifenow for all the inspirational tips and tricks. And I wanted to bring back to that ocean analogy you made, riding the waves. And we'll speak about, let's say, menopause real quick, because this is a really tumultuous ups and downs times. And in Chinese medicine, we view it as an imbalance between the fire and the water element. So if there's too much fire, and fire is like rises, so we can view any emotional exhaustion or angst or anxiety as a fire quality. We consume a lot of fiery foods, anything that's processed, alcohol, and like these things do have fire. And they consumes our water, and our water is our reservoir, our deep seated knowledge. And as we transition, we should become more into that, like that's where our preservation is. And so just something to think about too, because we talk about the nature of foods and there's and activities. Some activities are more fire, some are more water, like meditation and quietness, stillness, writing, creativity. Those are all water qualities versus like the doing and the thinking and that obsessiveness. So something to play with a little bit too, because in a really balanced world, menopause doesn't need to happen as it does in the West. Yeah. And it's something that it's a story. Yeah. It's a good story. And so a little bit of.
I found that the art of feminine presence practices really were a game changer for me, riding that particular wave. And I was able to maneuver through it. At first, I thought I was going to lose my mind. All of that was happening. And then as I learned the practices, which are very body-based, but very gentle, and it made a huge difference. And I can't say it will be that way for everyone, but it sure was for me. And a lot changed with the right kind of body awareness. Truly, I love your explanation of the fire and water. And I love listening to your descriptions of essence and everything too. So, we could have this conversation for quite a long time.
I know. We have to wrap up now, but and on the topic of the menopause, it's not actually age, because that pattern of the fire and water imbalance can show up in any age. I think I was early 20s when that pattern showed up in me. It's like, well, I'm not going through menopause, but I have all of these symptoms. Wow. So there's more to it. And thank you so much for joining me in this conversation today. We can carry on, and you and I both have some upcoming workshops. So we'll just share that in the comments below as we get more information on those, so you can keep in touch with myself and Fran.
I just posted the link in my Instagram link tree. So there's the art of showing up, being seen and heard as a woman in business, that I'll be offering on November 21st. So I'll definitely share that in the link later. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, we have to go. I'm sorry, our time goes by so fast, but wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. For us and for listeners, what will you take with you from this conversation that will support you for the rest of your life?
Wow, what a show today, and the journey does not stop here. Come travel the world with Nicole every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time as together we become more fluent in the language of healing on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. See you next week.